The storm had lasted 6 hours without stopping. By sunrise, the road connecting my property to the neighborhood of muddy water had cut straight through the road. I stood there wondering.
This road wasn't an ordinary neighborhood street. It crossed my land under a recorded easement that had existed for decades. The HOA residents use it every day to reach their homes. But the road itself was still my responsibility, only under specific terms. I went back inside and pulled out my original property records. The easement agreement clearly described access across my land. It also explained who was responsible for maintaining the road. That paragraph suddenly became very important. Around 9 that morning, Karen showed up without calling first. She climbed out of her SUV and immediately started pointing at the destroyed road. She didn't ask what happened or whether I was safe. Her first question was, "What, are you fixing this?" I told her the storm had destroyed the road overnight. Karen insisted that the HOA needed immediate access. I explained that repairs required an inspection before anyone could safely enter. She acted like my warning was nothing more than an excuse. Karen said the HOA would send contractors if I refused to act. I reminded her that the road was currently unsafe. She warned me that the HOA could make my life very difficult. I simply told her to read the easement agreement first. The maintenance clause was even clearer than I remembered. The HOA had obligations connected to maintaining the access route. My responsibility was limited to keeping the easement available under reasonable conditions. The storm had changed everything because the route was now physically unsafe. That afternoon, Karen called an emergency HOA meeting. She told the board that I was refusing to cooperate. She left out the fact that the storm had destroyed the road overnight. She also neglected to mention the maintenance language in the easement. By evening, more residents came down to see the damage. They finally realized the road wasn't something that could be repaired in an hour. Their normal route into the neighborhood was completely blocked. For the first time, Karen's confidence began to disappear. The county suggested a temporary detour while the damage was evaluated. It added nearly 20 minutes to every trip. Residents immediately started complaining about the inconvenience. Karen blamed me, even though the storm had caused the destruction. The next morning, an engineer arrived to inspect the washout. He measured the depth of the erosion and examined the damaged pavement. His first recommendation was to keep vehicles away from the broken section. Karen wasn't happy with that answer. Then the engineer asked to see the recorded easement. I handed him the documents I brought from home. He studied the maintenance section carefully. Then he looked up and asked Karen, who had been maintaining the road. Karen claimed the HOA had always assumed I handled maintenance. The engineer asked whether she had any records proving that. She couldn't immediately produce them. The residents began exchanging worried looks. The HOA eventually found decades of maintenance invoices. Most of them showed the HOA had paid contractors for repairs themselves. That completely changed the argument Karen had been making. The document suggested the association knew exactly how the road was maintained. The board scheduled another emergency meeting. This time, they weren't asking me when I would fix the road. They were asking why the HOA hadn't maintained it properly. Karen suddenly had a much bigger problem than a washed-out driveway. The engineer estimated that the repair would require proper drainage and structural reinforcement. It wasn't a simple matter of dumping gravel into the hole. The HOA now faced a substantial repair bill. Karen realized blaming me wouldn't make that bill disappear. That evening, Karen came back to speak with me privately. Her tone was completely different from the morning before. She finally admitted the HOA needed to resolve the maintenance issue. I told her I was willing to cooperate as long as everything followed the recorded agreement. We eventually reached a written repair agreement. The HOA would handle the major reconstruction and drainage work. I would provide reasonable access to my property for contractors. Everything was documented, so there could be no confusion later. Several weeks later, the road was finally reopened. The new drainage system directed stormwater safely away from the pavement. Traffic returned to normal almost immediately. For once, nobody was arguing about who owned the road. The storm had destroyed the road, but it also exposed a much bigger problem. Karen learned that an HOA couldn't simply rewrite property rights whenever it was convenient. The easement had rules, and the records told the real story. Sometimes the smartest move is simply letting the paperwork speak for itself.